Friends of Moncton Hospital. I think it was Matt that said right before, he was like, so is it just friends that you have from the Moncton Hospital? Is it actually the organization is called that? So I guess now we know it's
Now
Friends
we
of
know.
Moncton Hospital. But I hope by the end of this we will be friends.
Yeah.
So, or maybe we already
I
are.
think we already
I know.
are.
I
feel like we just built that connection.
Yeah, the conversations we've had before, I think, have just
Yeah.
made it so much easier. So, I guess I wanted to start, and I'm gonna go right off the deep end to start this off. And as I was driving here, I was thinking about, like, I think we all grow up with either it's reading a book or watching a movie or hearing these stories about these, like, turning a negative into a positive, or the breaking point of a character that's like, this is enough, I have to change my life around, or the tipping point where he's like, I'm screwing my life up and I need to make a drastic change. And sometimes it's a negative to a positive, sometimes it's a positive to a positive.
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm saying that is I'm wondering, like, when did you wake up and just say, like, I want to drastically make a change and improve the world around me?
That's a great question. For me, I was a very young age.
Yeah.
Actually started my first not-for-profit when I was in my 20s.
Okay.
And I just woke up one day and I was like, I just want to make an impact. And I was working somewhere at the time, and I saw that they were throwing out strollers and car seats and stuff. And I started saving that stuff and really just trying to help people with it.
Yeah.
Very, very early on. But there was something in there that you look around and say, I live in a great community. I live in a great part of the world, a great part of Canada. I have the ability to help people. Why would I not?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we all share that. I think that's what connects us as a community.
Yeah.
That's what connects us as Southeast New Brunswick.
Yeah.
We're such a generous, giving people,
I agree.
but it's relationships.
Yeah.
It's we have relationships, and we feel like everyone that we're helping, it's our neighbor, it's our friend, it's our family.
Yeah.
It's not a stranger. We
Yeah.
always feel like we're making an impact in someone's life that we deeply care about.
Yeah, I think very similar. I probably was a child. I thought healthcare would be, and it is, in just in another way.
Yeah.
And I lived in Toronto for about a decade, and when I moved back, I really wanted to give back to the community. Like, part of it was reinvesting where I would settle down, and the non-for-profit sector was where I landed and where I've grown through the community and now in philanthropy. So I think it was just a natural evolution of just really wanting to help people. And the non-for-profit sector offers such a flexible, impactful way to make change because we're nimble, because we tend to be able to be resourceful. You see impact and change much quicker than maybe you would see in other sectors, and I love that. Like, the ability to actually be an agent of change just excites me. So that is it for me.
Well, similar to Francis, I come from a healthcare background, so for me it was really implanted from a very young age. And I think up until university, after even graduating, I didn't know really what was my purpose, I guess, to do after graduating. Then I didn't know that side of healthcare, but I know of, like, the medical side, of the doctors and nurses, all like HR, general HR in the hospital, but I never understood really the need for a foundation at a hospital. And it's after a summer job that I noticed how important the changements made by the foundation was actually very important, and made access to better healthcare at home. So for me, it's really to succeed in a family dynamic that I grew up in, like that, doing it my way. It's like giving back, giving to what I know, but also secure for my next generation, or for my generation when our parents are gonna retire or whatnot. So.
And I think you touched on something important. I mean, we're talking about the next generation too. There's a lot of not-for-profits, and many that we've been a part of, where you're trying to survive each day, right? There's people dying on the street. There's people who are struggling, people at the end of their life that you need to raise money immediately to help them. We're in a place now where we're looking at helping people immediately, but also looking at future generations and looking at the systems that create healthcare, and how can we be the vehicle of change for healthcare transformation? And how can we look at that and say, in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, when my children grow up, how can they have better services or abilities or opportunities than we had? And that's really what motivates me now, is trying to look at the future generations to come. We have massive population growth. We have a lot of younger generation coming in. they want to have a great healthcare system for in their future.
Yeah.
How can we be a part of that story for them? Is really it's a heavy load, but it's also very enriching as we go.
Yeah, and to be part of those conversations, like sometimes I have to pinch myself, like with clinicians or researchers, and they're talking about, innovative cancer treatment and at the cusp of, cure is a way, but I'm like, wow, I don't understand what you're talking about, but it's
True.
so cool, and we get to come and support you in that way. Like, to be part of the conversations are such a privilege, and to be able to be looking forward and to be supporting big generational change, just really the best. And this sector has been recruiting talented people. I think historically you sort of accidentally fell in the sector, but more and more people are choosing to work in the sector, and they're really investing themselves. So I'm really excited about our team, but also the sector that really is attracting some really talented people here in Moncton.
And I love that you've mentioned, the not-for-profits that are doing these like short-term like survival type methods, which are super impactful, and we need that. But we often forget that when we think of healthcare, it's not just like stitching someone up, or someone came to the hospital with a broken leg, when you fix that, and emergency. It's also like cures and research and development and innovation that it's those are the things that happen in the background that it does take money. It does take resources. It takes involvement from the community, whether it's like hands-on or obviously monetary. I think we forget about that part, right? And that would be what I think you're most involved with.
Yeah, well, we're across there's 5 pillars that we really concentrate around: cancer care, women and children, brain health, mental health, and innovation, from robotics to AI to research and all about. So it is about the equipment, it's about the spaces, it's about the research, but it's also about the patient experience. And what came to mind when you were talking is around cancer care, we have Wellspring, New Brunswick, which is peer support. People are all living longer with the disease. It's no longer maybe a terminal diagnosis. People are living for decades with it. So can we provide the resources, the education, the support for patients and their families to be living comfortably, to have the skills, nutrition, exercise, to be able to have a good quality of life? That's also what we do, is around that patient enhancement and experience, which is also a growing interest of ours.
And we've said in meetings recently where we've said to people, what is it you need? And they'll say, well, I could use this piece of equipment or this, and we say, but what do you need for your patients? What do you need for your physicians? What would better support your nurses? What would give you more time interacting with your patients rather than taking notes? Or, is there innovation we can invest into? Or is there a support for you that we could invest into? What is the base or the root cause of what you need to be able to allow you to do more and to innovate more and to do more research?
What would be something like, I just want to hear a feel-good story, because you're saying a lot of stuff that gets me all excited. Like, what's something lately that you're like super proud about, that like the investment has come in and we've been able to, put this in place, or this has happened and it's so cool and we want to celebrate it?
I think what comes to mind just immediately is deep brain stimulation, which was invested last year. So through our brain health pillar. So Sean Ward from Sackville was the first recipient of the surgical intervention. So they implant in your brain, and it's for Parkinson's disease and other movement disorders. And Parkinson can be very debilitating, as you know. So he's spoken to our donor dinners and other things to say this has been life-changing. This has changed his life, the life of his family, and he's in his 50s, right? So that level of impact on one person, and others have been recipients ever since. Like, that comes to mind in terms of a relatively small investment, but a huge impact on his family, and then future patients who will benefit from this technology as well.
Nice.
And then there's the side of it too, where some people maybe are investing or making a contribution because they haven't had the best experience and they want to improve it for the next person. So I think there's a gentleman that his father was in the emergency room and he was there for quite a period of time. He was uncomfortable in the seats. And so after they decided, we'd like to buy all new seats for your emergency room so it's more comfortable for people when they have to wait. And so you think about that and think, yes, we talk about a positive to a positive. There's someone that had an experience, still had great interaction with the healthcare staff, with the hospital, but they had one part of it that maybe wasn't as sufficient as they would have liked. How can they now contribute to the next person sitting in that chair?
Okay.
And so now if you have to wait there with your family, with your child, now you have a more comfortable seat. That was the way they could invest into that to make it a better experience for the next person.
And I love how people like that have actioned, instead of complaining on Facebook or going on, you know, whatever Reddit or and complaining, like this person who has means was able to recognize an issue and address it. And that sort of public service announcement of there's ways you can help and this is how. You may not have tons of resources, but by investing in the friends and others, you can also have make a meaningful difference outside of, you know, the Facebook and social media world of
And
it.
I love go ahead.
But I
go
think
ahead.
like it's not, when we think about donation, it's money, right?
Yeah.
For me, especially the new generation, we're not quite at the point where we're retiring and money is very accessible. So what I like to think and what I think is starting to give back is to act as a community. So a lot of times you see group coming together to support a family member, cousin or whatnot, but also the feeling of after an experience at the hospital, positive or negative, I think it gives a wake-up call for someone to do a change. And those are very powerful moments or powerful groups and togetherness, I guess, that people from that experience can do so much more. And it doesn't need to be money all the time, but it needs to be part of the change. Be an activist of the change. So for me, that's what I like, and to hear the people's story, it's really what is important and special to our job. I think the moments, some are positive, a lot of it is very positive, and I think just the projects that are going on are from positive experience, but it's the investment that people are willing to sacrifice for even greater care or just sustainable care in that sense. So it's very magic.
And you, like, in both of you, kind of it comes together really well because, you know, obviously we're close to going into an election, and I love the Facebook comment and all that. Is like, you know, there's a lot of energy oftentimes from a bad experience that gets just pushed on social media, and I think social media can do really good things, but it can also sometimes create these echo chambers where we're not really driving any change, we're just bitching, right? And I think, like, the point that you make is our generation, even though we maybe don't have the resources, we do have the energy to be an activist, to put our ideas together, to maybe like that idea to a person that does have money, then they're like, wow, I never thought of that. I want to invest in that, right? So that's something that I think, you know, that complaining energy there, if we could all kind of transfer it over, and instead of like pointing the finger outwards, is being like, okay, well, let's put some solutions to the conversation, right?
And I think the negative, what's very important and what we've been doing is, even a negative experience, how can we make it better? Being out in the field, and having great connections with our medical staff and doctors and the hospital is to always create it better, so to correct a negative experience. But thankfully, really, it's very positive. And
and we'll get I'm in denial I'm not part of the young generation anymore, but I'll accept that. But there's some great ideas and so much passion in that age group, and to be able to mobilize and bring solutions forward. I will get emails or messages saying, have you thought of this? Have you thought? Not everything's actionable, of course.
For sure. Yeah.
However, great ideas. And we just brought one up in a meeting. I was like, have you thought of that? They were like, actually, no, but here's how we could work to address that issue.
Okay.
So like, bring ideas, bring your thought, bring that passion, like get involved. There's always all these opportunities. So we are more than happy to funnel that passion towards healthcare.
So we're talking about all of these things here, and I think I kind of asked before, and you gave a really great answer before we started filming, and I think a lot of people wonder, what does Friends of Moncton Hospital do exactly, right? Like what part of the conversation are they a part of, or, you know, like what do they do on a day-to-day? Like, how does that look like? Tell me all about it.
Well, we use philanthropy to help advance the standard of care or drive healthcare transformation. So for us, fundraising is not in itself a goal. It really is to help advance and transform healthcare at the Moncton Hospital and related community. Um, we get to be able to have a bird's eye view and look at the opportunities to engage with the doctors and the nurses and healthcare professionals and have those conversations and identify these key opportunities that we think would be meaningful in advancing. I feel so privileged to be able in this position to be able to look that high up and to have those conversations and identify those areas where we can help and engage our donors, thousands of people that are part of this collective. So that's what we do in a nutshell around those 5 pillars I addressed. But that evolves as well as the needs of the population. So I think Marc alluded to population growth.
Yeah.
Our population is growing significantly. I think
Unreal.
Second year in a row. It's changing in its diversity and its composition, and we need to make sure that we are meeting that demand that's culturally appropriate, that's competent, that's trauma informed. So we're really having all those conversations, and we're able to bring in community sector partners into that conversation and saying, like, how can we work together more closely? Like, it is not the hospital and then this clinic. It really should be this ecosystem. Right. So I love to be that convener around certain thematic, like mental health, for example, which is such a need in our community.
Yeah, and it's, Friends is not a silo. We are actually the bridge between many different groups that come together. Cool, and I love it's amazing staying there with physicians or with people from the healthcare sector, because they do this every day. They're on the front lines. They're the ones that are making the biggest impact. And so we need to hear from them, but then we need to hear from the community, and we need to hear from the bigger picture of, but what's the systemic cause?
Right.
So, I come from working with homelessness and mental health and addiction. I think many times I see somebody who's struggling with substance use, and I know that they have chronic pain. How could we build a system where they can get that chronic pain dealt with or supported so they don't have to look to substances to mask that? And those are the type of things that cross your mind as you work in the front lines and work within our community, is start looking at the root causes, the big picture, and looking at the system to say, how can we improve the system? Because we know there's a lot of generous people in this community that want to go back and help start looking at the root cause of what's happening. Right. They've been trying to fix problems and trying to put money into solutions. But let's look at the root causes and start to address those and look at systemic change.
The way I like to see it is really to bring services or the root of the problem home. So not the problem, but the services to cure the problem or to solve the problem. Often we hear about people going elsewhere for treatment. Well, there's nothing like being treated home. Whether you have the money, the funds, you always need your support system. Whether that's in Bouctouche, that's way closer Moncton Bouctouche than Moncton Toronto. So it's sometimes we don't realize, but we do projects here that are always to give better care. So whether that's standard care or better care for better treatment accessible at home, so you can go under treatment with your family, with your support. So, and I think that's really important and that comes with the community feeling of coming together and support too.
I'm kind of wondering, and this is maybe not, maybe you have a personal opinion on it, or even based on what you're seeing on a day-to-day. You alluded a little bit to the root causes of a lot of the problems that we have, and I'm wondering, like, whether it's, mental health, or it's, the any issues with health in general. What do you think, like, in our population, is there anything that's unique, or is there anything that you see a lot, you're like, man, I wish, like, I wish we shedded a little bit more light on this, and maybe by focusing more on this, it would maybe change a lot more things than we think?
I have many
Tough
opinions.
I have
so many.
So many opinions.
I look to France for this
I'm
one.
like within this row.
What can I say on camera?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly. I'm like.
But there's like two sides of that story, and you can go ahead. But I like to see it on another side, more positive, of what we have here that maybe we don't realize, but you can.
Yeah, I just think of what came to mind when you were asking is around health literacy.
Okay.
People knowing about their health and being able to act on their health. That whole prevention side around healthy living. New Brunswick is full of beautiful eco tourism places.
True.
Fundy, Kushibuwak, etc. In Moncton alone, we have a handful of parks, skiing on demand. Like we have the perfect infrastructure to be 100%. Able to support active living, healthy, but there is a piece missing. Is it education? Is it resources? Is it money? We really need to connect the dots for people. Someone had made a comment to me years ago who had come from somewhere else and said, population doesn't look well. Right, and they went to Walmart. Anyways, but the comment was like, what does that mean? Right? Smoking is high. Like we still have a lot of these controllable health factor. And myself, I'm on a journey, but that we really need to be equipping people with the tools and resources that they can take ownership of their own health. That came to mind initially when you were talking around the prevention piece, which I don't know that we really do enough. Yeah.
No, I don't know.
You're on the spot now.
I don't know if it's a perfect connection. I think I'll connect it later on, but like, yeah, you can. But I was more thinking of, there's a lot of maybe reason, or people are asking why, what could we do? But we also, like for me, working at the Moncton Hospital, and I'm from, like I said, a healthcare community, and I've been into the system for a long time, but I didn't notice how lucky we were to have. One thing that really stood out for me was the NICU, and having the NICU and all that it helps with, all that people that it connects to, is something that really is does big changes. So I think, I know it's not really connected to what you said, but it is very powerful, and seeing in firsthand, it's like, wow, like we have that home.
What is that specifically?
NICU, sorry, it's a
neonatal intensive care unit.
Okay.
But I think to what your point, and I will add, is around access to appropriate care close to home, right? Yeah. So the Moncton Hospital, I'm relatively new, and I was like, best kept secret. Like you don't do a good enough job talking about all the great services that you offer. And Women and Children, or Obstetrics and Newborn, is a regional hub around specialized care for babes and moms and parents. And the new unit is opening soon to be able to provide more services. But if I think of access, we do a great job around several areas, but there's still areas like mental health, for example, which is one I'd like, around opportunities, access to resources for people. I have resources, I have access, and it's still hard to find mental health services. So if you don't have that resources or education, like where do you go? So I think there's opportunities like that we really need to be identifying.
And that one is still, I think today it's becoming far better than it was maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago. But, I think even around, just being a male and thinking of like, hey, I'm going to go, maybe try therapy out for a little bit. Like 10 years ago, it's like you
just don't do that.
You'd be in a friend circle and they'd laugh at you, right? And I think that's sad. But today is getting better and better. However, it is still difficult to break free of that status quo or that misconception that you have in your mind that's an illusion, that it's only for people that have problems. Like it's also for support, right? And I think like I went through some of it, and albeit I've kind of stopped and probably should it's something that you should kind of go in waves, like when you needed a knob, it still should have that continuous support. But I found it very liberating to have a space where it doesn't matter what you talk about, it just matters that you're talking. And I think a lot of people don't, like, they allude to that you need a problem in order to go do it. And I think it's just about creating that safe space where it's like, just say what's on your mind, and don't be inside of your head being at the same time the judge and the jury, right? Because you're kind of like always just circling around a problem that you're accusing yourself or trying to judge yourself on, but you're also the person that's kind of on the stand doing the posturing as well. So that was an interesting one. The other thing that you were saying about the preventative stuff, I think that one, especially where I see an angle on that is, you know, we go through the school system and it's not ever really a topic like finances or you know physical health. We go to education physique an hour a day.
Career, like it's.
But there's not like there's not that continuous education on figuring out like, okay, what's a healthy lifestyle, what's a healthy diet, you know, those things there, which down the line you're probably seeing people at the 45-year-old mark, 50-year-old, 60-year-old mark that like if they would have known those things, they'd be much healthier at that point. But it's late now, not too late.
It's one thing about where we live is we're very comfortable, we're very fortunate, right, for the community we live in. And so there's a lot of things that we take for granted. One of it's our health many times. And we don't think about our health and address our health until we have to. Till it's staring us in the face. And that's something that you know, I've been guilty of that in the past. I think a lot of people have, no different than mental health and going to see a counselor. You don't do that until you feel like you have to. It could have been prevented a long time ago. And I really started appreciating the health system when I had my first child 2 years ago. And we went to the hospital, and it's a whole new world I never knew, was how to navigate the system, how much support was actually there, and how much great work, but with so few resources, right? And then you get in there and you start to appreciate it more and see the great work being done and how much more they could do. And then we have this new maternal newborn unit about to open, and they're thinking about the bigger picture. So for example, there's a hostel built into our new unit. So family from far away can come and stay with you at the hospital if you're there for an extended period of time with a child. And so we're starting to think about that and saying, let's involve the family, the support system in our journey through healthcare. Instead of just one person trying to fight it alone, let's do it together. France talked about the cancer support groups. That is a way that we can get people who are all going through the same struggle in the room together to talk. Because a lot of times they don't. They think they have to struggle alone, or they're the only person going through it. Dozens and hundreds of people are going through the same thing, but they need a venue they can come together and open that dialogue.
Yeah, and I think I would add just the shift towards a family-centered approach. I think what we hear often is the attention is all on the patient for good reasons. But the families, the caregivers often don't get the support or resources that they need. I used to work in end of life, and we would admit people, obviously, for end of life, but sometimes because the caregivers were so exhausted, they had no support because of rural or that we admitted primarily for that. So can we build not just for patients, but all that ecosystem to support families and caregivers from birth to end of life, right?
And to add to that, like to support, I think also projects that are coming from, often we hear projects coming from patients or donors of ours that have a void to fill, and it's a philanthropy void, so they want to give back in a way, and some have significant ways of doing something big or something less large, but is very impactful. And I think that's also part of our job, is to give access to that step also of healthcare, of grieving, of filling the void, to give back in the same sense to the healthcare system. And that's very special that's what I very much like about my job. I think it's getting to know the why and the heart of why someone wants to give is really, and when you know the story, you also kind of is part of it, and you want as much as a donor to make it happen, because you hear stories that it's so gratifying for a job to hear the stories and the community that can come to do better for the next one.
And that's the difference between a relational and a transactional.
Right.
Yeah. So we want to build a relationship. We don't want to have transactions with people. That is cold. That's not a fulfilling thing for somebody who wants to build a legacy for their family. But if you build a relationship and say, you tell me your heart, you tell me where you want your money to go, and you tell me the impact you want your family to have in this sector, let's make that happen.
Yeah.
But if we just show up, like you said earlier, and just calling everybody, say, we need your money, that's just a transaction. That's not what people are looking for. There's nothing fulfilling, right? So we have to build relationships and make it about the person in front of us more than about us.
And I was thinking, how could I kind of ask this question? But you answered it really kind of poetically, both of you, is that, it's not so much about doing the cold calling. It's about being there in the moment and just listening and seeing that, there's bad situations that often create a really good opportunity for making a really big impact on the person that might be in their seat, in 5, 10, 15 years from now, or also might reduce the amount of people that might be in those situations because of that generous donation, right?
Yeah.
Do you find that there's specific situations that breed the most generous donations? Like, do you see it? Is it those moments where, I'm thinking like near death, or it's like or is it just
Yeah, I don't know if there's that. We do donor surveys, so Tell Me, etc. People want to give to their hospital. Like they have a personal connection there, maybe through experience, maybe because of the family, but they identify there's a belongingness to the hospital and they want to give there. So that's what I would say. I think what is interesting so we have community initiatives that happen. So these are patients mostly, or families who've been mostly positively impacted by the care and feel so excited to give back that they will organize campaigns around some priorities. So we have several examples: Tiny Dreams, Angel Fund, Becca Schofield Fund, etc. These are families that come together and they recognize a need and they say, we will fundraise specifically for that. And many of those funds are multiple years. Like they are recurrent year after year, and the people and the families show up and they're still invested. And I think that's incredible to have that level of commitment based on an experience that happened 5, 10, 20 years ago is incredible. So to keep that going as part of our role, our team's role, is to support them in that. But I think that's really meaningful. And obviously we get major gifts and donations that come out of other interests, corporate interests to help. They want to reinvest. It aligns with what they hope to do. So obviously we have a lot of those conversations as well.
And you're talking about, the younger generation as well, and the next generation. And I see there's people that are making investments, but they're bringing their children, their children or their grandchildren along with them to see the impact. And what that's doing is now they're having a legacy for generations to come.
Right.
We had somebody that just recently passed away, and the son reached out to us to make a donation on their behalf. And so there's the next generation who's investing and keeping that going. And that's where there's a beautiful thing that can happen with legacy giving and with future gifts, is that you're teaching the next generation how important it is to give back and make an impact in your community. And that's something that we're very privileged to get to see. A lot of people wouldn't get to see behind the curtain, but where we can, it keeps me going every day to really see the impact they're making.
And I think to highlight again Becca Schofield, I wasn't at the Friends at the time, but I think for our generation, Becca Schofield was a big piece of supporting, showing support, a movement. And I think a movement for the younger generation is really what is going to do a lot of change and engage people in the cause, whether it's the hospital, a specific need, or just their hospital, which is Moncton Hospital. So once again, her movement was unbelievable. But what I'm thinking too is generation. You never know until you live it for most of the time. So when you go to the hospital, you usually go to your hospital. So to give locally is probably more meaningful after you go through the system. But it's giving locally has so much positive. You're giving straight to your hospital. The money is directly invested in your services. Like we're saying, we want healthcare more accessible at home. So to give at your hospital, it's for your healthcare, your kids' healthcare, your grandparents' healthcare. So that's also very important to keep in mind, that locally is important.
One question that I'm sure a lot of people ask themselves, and it's kind of I don't know if there's a straightforward answer to it, but I'd love to hear, obviously you have a positive impact with the donors and the money that comes in, but I think often people ask themselves is, why does the private sector, like that donation, need to happen, and why is it not all happening with our taxpayer dollars?
Yeah, the need is so great.
Yeah.
So I'd say the taxpayer dollars is to maintain the standard of care, right? We have the vantage point of advancing it,
Right,
to push it forward, to drive transformation. So that's the difference. And because of our business model, because of our non-fundraising revenue, a lot of the dollars, if not, well, the large majority goes directly to the hospital. So we have, just because of the model, the diversification, so it is a good return on investment because of how we function as a foundation. But it's always a tricky question, whose responsibility is it? I think it's a collective responsibility. And coming back to Mark, like the Moncton region, Southeast New Brunswick is so generous. There is still that power of collectivity coming together. We saw it during COVID, the mobilization. It is something we don't find everywhere in Canada. It's very rare. So it's incredible to be part of that space, but how do we keep it going and keep it mobilized? The Friends is one of many other non-for-profit who also are working tirelessly to advance their cause. And if it's not the Friends, there's others. So certainly, I always encourage people to get to know this sector, to get to know the cause, to get to know the work, how it works, how it services are rendered. You'll be probably shocked, but also probably impressed by how much you do with so very little.
I think that's an important piece too, is we're so resourceful. We stretch every dollar we can, right? So people make an investment and we say, okay, perfect, we can do this, but let's also do this, this, and this, because we can leverage our resources. Can we get an in-kind donation? Can we get someone else to match that gift to make it go even further? So all of a sudden, you thought you're investing in this one thing, now there's three things. So we've now doubled or tripled the investment to do more. And so that's where we're really resourceful in the not-for-profit sector. That maybe government or some of the private sector may not be able to be as resourceful as us.
Yeah, and I've always kind of wondered with and you answered it really well. Very well said politically, I guess.
I think our job is to enhance healthcare. If you go into big hospital in the country, everywhere, they all have foundation, right? And what foundation do is they help with better access to care. So I think government funds are being used for standard care, which should a hospital be using to be, or that needs to be funded to work that way. But example, the DBS brain simulation, that's because of donor money. That's not standard care, but it's very accessible to great life-changing care at home. Or the fibroid treatment, or like it's our job to make that accessible to our community, our parents, our friends. So
and I think be great. I guess the question's coming from a position where I think collectively we all look, and you've all kind of talked about it, is we look at the healthcare system, especially through COVID, as like all of that pressure that was put on it, and then you start seeing like the news of, oh, we have a surplus, and oh, we saved all this money and all that. You're like, our healthcare's in shambles, like, and so that's where, like, I think sometimes people just, it raises some of those questions that it's great to hear the actual answer and be like, oh, okay, well, if you put it that way, that makes way more sense. And I love that answer, right?
And I think there's the ebb and flow of government, but we're trying to build consistency.
Exactly.
So no matter no matter what position of government on any given day, we're still moving forward on these projects. And I think that's what really matters and why people invest into it, because they want to see it go to completion without the ups and downs along the way.
And that's why the relationship behind, it's not a transaction. It's really important to understand why your heart to why you're giving. So I think for the donor to tell us that, then it gives us security for the donor, but also for us, because we want to make that dream or that project happened for that person. But like I said, you're part of that project too. You feel like you have a responsibility and you're making great change too. So you want to make that happen as well, as much for them as for the hospital. So it's like and we try, well, not we try, it's obviously every time a donor wants to fill a certain void, we know where to connect that person with that project because of the other projects that we know of. So that's what I like, is connecting to why this would be good for you and why this project would fill that, example, losing a child. Why this project is actually honoring him. So it's
But I don't want to go in the nitty gritty of like our, how things, but we have tools like endowments. So people invest X amount of money in legacy, usually in memory, or because they want to have this impact. And we're able to grow that fund. That fund is untouched, but the investment goes back into this. We have tools that the public sector does not. We have tools to grow the fund and reinvest in more nimble ways and flexible, coming back to that flexibility. We're really able to drive that change and drive in a very different way than maybe other, public sector specifically.
And people give in amazing ways. Like you can give your investments, you can give securities, you can give a house. Like we can receive gifts of different types that people don't even think about. And it's a beautiful thing when it happens, because then people are giving and it continues to grow.
Is that what the Bannon House is?
That's what the Bannon House. So go.
So Bannon House was gifted to the Friends, obviously in memory, or by the Bannon family. And it was given specifically to be a resource center for people living with cancer.
And is this someone that had lost their battle to cancer? Or?
I don't know that there is a direct relationship in that way, but it was proximity of the hospital. It's perfectly positioned on Macbeth, right at the corner. It's a beautiful house, will be renovated fully, will be a full resource center, but it was donated for this purpose, and that's we're obviously honoring and then growing that presence. So Bannon is one of our really, we're quite proud of this charitable program, and we're able to offer that sort of resources. So that's already started at YMCA. They're doing relaxation and visualization. Cancer Connect is a peer support. So we have volunteers and facilitators trained. And then there's yoga, and there'll be other things offered. But once it's fully operational, it'll be great.
So this would be something where, talk me through what a house like that does for, like, let's say I have cancer, and the resources there. How does that operate for me, or how does that help me out?
I always say, I always take it from my position. If I got a diagnosis, right, I'm educated, I have resources, great support system, it is devastating, right? There is many people, and including people who are well supported, that what do you do after? Who do you
doesn't matter
talk to?
who you are in a hospital office. I can't even imagine having a diagnostic. So imagine two educated people that could also be doctors, or it doesn't matter who you are in that office.
So it's finding a place that people can come, drop by. There's people who with lived experience, which will be there, that are trained volunteers to accompany you, to answer questions, to help you navigate the system and other resources, to provide you the skills that you need. Maybe it's exercise, maybe it's nutrition, maybe it's mindfulness, so that you're able to live and have a better quality of life. As far as I know, there's nothing in the area of the like. So Bannon House will be one of the first. It's offered through Wellspring, the programs, and it's accessible for everyone, free of charge. So it doesn't really matter who you
Where
are.
does an idea like that spring from? Do you know where's the origin?
I think long-standing conversations, 5+ years, many of our predecessors actually, and we're finally seeing it into fruition. Wellspring has been in place for decades in Ontario, and it has different chapters and affiliates across Canada. So we are one of the first sites in New Brunswick. St. John and Fredericton offer their own programs as well. But it's recognizing a need and then acting on that need. And I think because of our position, we're able to do that. And Wellspring through a charitable program is one example, but maybe there's others that we're going to identify and also act on. So,
and again, this is where we go back to the relationships. We are not here for a quick win. We're here for a long-term relationship. So that somebody's wish, when they have that wish, when they have the means, when they want to make the gift, we know how to help them and pair them up with what they're looking to do.
Even
and
after
it's so
the
impactful.
fact sometimes, even after the fact, sometimes we have that donor family or that donor that we had conversation previous, and we know what the wish is or what the big dream is, and the dream can become reality years afterwards, but it's always relationship that we keep and we like at the foundation cultivate through the years. So when another opportunity, a better and another opportunity become available, well, that's also because we have the relationship that we can link those.
Do you I'm just thinking about this. I'm not sure if it's super easy to answer. Do you remember the first yes that was told to you, like about like I want to do this, or I want to like? Do you remember that first impactful moment that you were involved in?
I've only been there 6 weeks, so I'm going to pass that off to someone else. I've had
no yeses yet.
I've had a few yeses, but nothing like.
I remember my first one, and I think like it's just to say again how relationship is important. How deeply we care about building a relationship is really what we think at the foundation, and what as a junior my directors and directors are also believing in, and I think that is also showing the heart of the friends. So it took a lot of hours to build that relationship, but in order to do so, I was able to secure a gift that is very, very meaningful for the family. That has been years and years events prior to the gift. But because of knowing the story and knowing the why, I was able to connect with the perfect project. And to me, when I had the first yes, it was like I was part of it too. It was right. Just the connection gets like personal with the family, and you want it as much as them, right? Special.
I think what came to mind when you were talking, that one of the surprises coming from another community sector who didn't maybe have that longevity of relationship, and I felt like you had to beg and borrow, not steal, but like just it felt like really urgent, and is end of year people would call us and be like, we have money for you, do you want it? And it's like absolutely, like, to have that relationship and infrastructure and reputation to be able to work with these corporations or these agencies who thought of you without you knowing they were thinking of you is such a strong reputation to build on. And that was surprising to me, and also validating for the organization to have people think of you without you asking all the time. So I thought that was really a shift for me, and really validating of the choice to be able to like say, okay, it's already happening now, how can we keep building on this so we get more reach and
younger generation.
And relationships are built on trust, right? And I think like, you know, your impact, whether it's you know, directly with your involvement with a person that donates, where you build that relationship, you get the trust out of them, like hands-on building that relationship. There's also that other side where it's like all those efforts that people see or hear about builds that trust, where you might have never, like that phone call that you might have gotten, you probably didn't even know that person knew about you and have never talked to them, but they've seen so much and heard so much that they're like, you know, if I had dollars to spend to improve our community, this is the organization. So
and you think
get that,
Friends of Moncton Hospital, 60 years, $100 million raised in 60 years, healthcare transformation for that period of time. And we had this amazing event just last week. We had the Nurses Auxiliary in. So nurses who have been part of the hospital for 40 plus years all came and toured this new unit we're about to open. And we got to be a part of that. And and they were almost, you know, they were in tears at some point just seeing it, saying, I wish I would have had that. Look how beautiful this is. And it meant so much to them. And I thought the whole time, you're thanking us. We're thanking you.
Right.
You delivered most of the babies that came through this hospital. You're the ones that sat beside us when we got those diagnoses. You invested your whole lives into this. It's an honor to be able to host you.
Yeah.
And so I think too of, you say trusted, you know, it's 60 years of history and growth and building trust in a community. And many people know it takes a long time to build that trust.
100%.
But once you have it, I think people see it and they want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
There's a momentum.
Yeah.
And we're doing a really good job right now of doing the social media side of that too, to remind people about, so we're doing news clippings and we're doing old stories to remind people of the journey we've been through.
Cool.
Yeah. And it's a responsibility we take very, very seriously to be able to store those donors and honor that history.
Yeah.
It's not a responsibility I take lightly in our board either.
Yeah.
To recognize the incredible 60 years. The auxiliary group raised $2.5 million.
Wow.
And they're now sunsetting their organization because of natural factors.
Yep.
But that's $2.5 million that would not have come otherwise. They
Right.
did tables and sold coffee and
Okay.
ran
okay.
shops and just to invest in the Moncton Hospital. So
Wow.
we want to make sure that we're honoring that history. And that's one example of many. And then we keep building. So that responsibility weighs heavy, certainly on our shoulder to make sure that we are keeping that going.
Another one that, like you were saying, like $2 million comes from coffee or come from different, sometimes small pizza sale.
Yeah.
But one that really shows that $1 can make a big difference. And I'm French, but I'm from Moncton.
Yeah.
And I always remember when I was in high school to hear the Trojan Treks.
Okay. Okay.
And when I started working at the Friends, nearly after was their annual event. So I went, I'm like, wow, these kids have been raising, I'm not going to say the number.
It's over $400,000.
Oh my God.
I didn't want to say and that's kids in school.
Crazy.
So that's not like millions of dollars
Yeah.
that individual give,
Yeah.
or obviously not million, but like thousand.
Yeah.
So it's just the power of $1, how much it can change, but also to show the face of the hospital and show the face of their friends to the kids.
Yeah.
So it can then be transferred, or so it's
Yeah.
very cool to also see like the engagement and the responsibility that the teachers see in investing time and energy doing those for the students.
Yeah, and they probably, you know, at the end of the day, whether they see it or they don't, it's crazy to be involved with that much impact at a young age, and there's always kind of this subconscious effect in doing that kind of like, you know, being involved in those, whether it's a committee or some sort of traditional event that people donate to. It does spur this like motivation to continue to do good things, right? And I think it's good to see that Moncton Hospitals get involved with that. So
a lot of great community. Bernice McNaughton, like there's all these groups that have been invested for so many years.
Wow.
So really excited to see.
And I'm sure some of those, you know, if you've been there for 60 years, some of the Harrison Trimble students and the Bernice McNaughton are the doctors and the nurses of tomorrow. And, and so it's the involvement's there.
And it's exciting. Like I see a lot of hope in the generation to come. I see a lot of passion.
Yeah.
I see a lot of innovation.
Yeah.
And really saying, you know, yes, it's been done like this. How can we do it different to support you even more? And so there's this kind of this groundswell happening. You know, you talked about COVID. We saw it during COVID.
Yeah.
People gave like we never saw before. People were innovative. People wanted to support their local community. We're seeing this Canada movement right now that's happening. And there could be ripple effects of that, of people saying, I want to invest in my local community and I want to keep on building that infrastructure and building what we need to grow our own neighborhoods. And I think that we're going to keep on seeing that because we're so proud of where we live and we have such diversity and population growth that people are excited for what's to come. And Moncton is this perfect microcosm. Like we're the big city feel, but it's home. And that's the beautiful thing is people want a hospital that feels like a big city hospital, but they also want to have the patient care that feels like they're at home.
I always say we're like we have a little bit of everything, but we don't have everything that we need, but we just have enough, right?
It's there when we want it,
Yeah.
and when we don't, we can stay at home, and it's no problem at all.
Yeah.
And that's just
Yeah.
it's the evolution of our community, and we're trying to stay with that trend and stay ahead of that trend because it's going to catch up with us. So we have to move very quickly and nimbly to stay ahead of that.
The way I see it, it's maybe because I working the system itself, but I think what's most important for us than our health.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
to me, it's obvious that investment in the healthcare system is going to be great for me one day, but also great for my mother, my dad, my close people, but also close people to my people and people I went to school with. So to me, healthcare is number one. And I think it's just, well, it's all personal, but to me, it's, and seeing all the projects coming to life and life changing for like the DBS patient that we had, listening to him share the story was unbelievable. Like it was really surreal. His
quality
I can talk about
his
it, so I'm
quality of
kind
life has improved that much.
I'm gonna turn the question a little bit into something that I've asked for at a couple of guests, and I'm curious to see if they helped or it influenced or however it may be. Do you remember what your first job was, and has it had an impact on the person that you are today, whether it's in your career or personal or whatnot? Love to hear.
I think it's partially because we moved and I'm like going down memory lane, like through finding things. And I'm having all these like moments, like I'm middle-aged, so I'm like, oh my God, romanticizing the past. Anyways, all that to say, first job was cleaning boats. So like just really hard work and being able to roll up your sleeves. And I still am very much like, you need something. But I worked at the IGA as a cashier, my first like formal job. And to be able to work retail, that level of customer service is exceptional. If you do it right, those skills of like conflict resolution, speed, nimbleness, critical thinking, all of that serves me to this day. And I always reflect on how valuable that experience was at the IGA for a couple summers and winters. Is like, I'm so happy I lived through that. I wouldn't take the pay again, but like, but like just really foundational for everything I've done so far. So absolutely.
Couldn't agree more.
My first job, I was 14 and I started cutting lawns.
Oh, nice.
And I picked up about 6 or 7 contracts in one summer, and I was going around, and I learned the value of money. I learned the value of responsibility. I learned that people are depending on you. And I learned that you have to give good quality service. Because I remember a few times I didn't do the best job. They came out and said, keep on cutting. And, but again, it's those learning lessons you learn. You're such a young age. And, not you're not making a lot of money. And I also remember cherishing the money I did make because there was so little of it. And my parents always had this theory with me. They said, whatever you want, if you'll pay for half, we'll pay the other half. My first car, going to school, all of that. And there's those type of things that I think of when I think about how people in our communities in Southeast, we work hard. And we will do everything we can to earn what we can and to become comfortable. But we're also as generous as we make. And I think that's such an important thing for me that I learned early on.
For me, and it's funny that you asked because I always keep saying that, and I hope my parents don't take it the wrong way, but even
too late.
But sometimes I even think it was greater than university. Well, not really, but yes, in a sense that my first job was at a golf course. And to this day, you wouldn't even believe how many relationships that I built on from those years. And now, but also it taught me how to connect, because relationship is so important, like you said. So with a respect always. But people expect respect in different ways sometimes. But it's all the art of reading and keeping conversation professional but intimate for philanthropy, like getting to know. So mastering the art of it and just to learn, like I always compare, to talk to someone and to turn around to talk to another someone with the same respect, but totally different
conversation,
French or English or Czech and very French standards. So that's where probably I would have never learned to do that before. But I'm all to say that even like after university, did I really know what I wanted to do? No. And it got me thinking of that job again. And I think for me, I always wanted to be in healthcare, like it's where my heart is. But I never had or saw a place where I could fit in to the healthcare. So then thinking about that, and now in my position is just like the perfect mix. And to be able to play my part in the healthcare system, and to also show up for my generation that's next. Not next, but there. So to be out there talking to our people and showing the importance is really something I don't take for granted, but very much take care of.
It's great to to see a variety of age groups and men, women, and whoever that are all involved in it. So you can see like it's not because I've been alive for so long that now I know how important it is, and this is why I'm in the Friends of Moncton Hospital. It's like, no, I like you say, it's like I have a upbringing where I've been involved in healthcare, and it's been around me, and I've even at an early age noticed that if I can have an impact on my community, this is in the sector that I want to do it, right? So that's super cool to see. I will finish off with one question. It's one that I always try to kind of tinker with to make sense of the people that's on, but what I'm wondering is I want to ask you is, if you were to start all over again, your journey in the job you are today in philanthropy and giving back and all of that, and there was someone watching today, whether it's they're kind of interested in doing this or even they've never been interested, and just watching this would have kind of been like, oh, okay, maybe there's more than just doing cold calls and getting told no at every single time. Or even someone that is looking at how they can have an impact on the community. What's one piece of advice that you would give on like if I were to do it again, this is what maybe I would have done differently or a little bit more of, that would have got me on my feet doing a little bit better with the fundraising or the involvement or anything that's related to what you're doing today?
I think it's never too late.
So
even if that person would have liked to do something, it's never too late to do it. And that's also we see it often that people grieve or go through the cycle of treatment differently. So often it can be in years after the fact. And we're here and care all along the way. And we respect that because we know how we can be sensible and everyone's journey is different. But I think for me, working at the Friends, what really is a motivation to give and to be part of the movement is really not the amount of money, but to be the voice too for your healthcare system. And for then when time comes, if you can give, then you already been involved, and trust and relationship built for decades or years with the Friends Foundation. So all that. And to follow also like it's never about you, but it's always it is about you, but it's also about your family. So what did your dad wanted to do in his life, or what did your brother, or like it's all family connection, and I think that's really one of our big strengths too is family donors. That is something important to transfer generation and making sure that the one line is still followed through the generation.
I think what comes to mind, like, I think 30, 40 years ago, there was like 4 professions, like pick one, choose one, and that's your lane. That is not the case now, right? Like it's opened up, and there's a lot of way to support healthcare that is non-clinical. If you want to go the clinical route, there's a lot of need there. You have great job security, but there's all these other ways that you can help transformation in healthcare, and start exploring those. I think that is what comes to mind. Plus, we talked about relations the entire interview.
Yeah.
Moncton is so relational. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
reflecting back, I would have really prioritized building those relationships, getting into the community, making sure I got involved, that I got to know the issues much earlier than I did. Coming back from Toronto, I took that initiative, but that was still well in my 30s.
Right.
I probably would have started earlier if I really recognized the importance of this community piece, instead of me, myself, and I. So, yeah.
True.
That's a good question. I've been thinking. I'm glad you guys both went first.
I don't know if I answered it good or not.
It was great.
I think it was really
We
great.
shall see.
Yeah,
I think I would have learned earlier on the value of relationships,
Yeah,
and that
yeah.
this isn't a job about sales.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because
Yeah.
it's so easy when you're desperate to get the money in the door, you lose that relationship a little,
Right, right.
and it's hard to get it back.
Yeah.
I would have valued relationships
Mhm.
and built them and backed it up, and really got to know the people.
Yeah.
Which I understand now. That's my whole focus. That's my raison d'être. Is
Yeah.
let's focus on people and build that relationship.
Yeah.
But if you ever have a moment where it's transactional, you lose a piece of yourself, and you really feel that, and that stays with you.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel great.
Yeah.
And sure, you've accomplished something, but that's not what you wanted to do. And I think that's what I would go back and change earlier on in my
Yeah,
career.
yeah.
And I just want people to understand, because we saw this during COVID, a lot of people with really great jobs left the private sector, left the public sector, and came into the not-for-profit sector.
way.
Because what they saw is, I'm not feeling fulfilled in the work that I'm doing. I want to make an impact in my community now, because I'm stuck at home thinking about my life and how I can benefit my community I'm living in.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, if they want to come into this sector, passion, and really thinking about what's your skill set, because almost anybody's skill is transferable into not-for-profit
100%.
sector.
Absolutely.
And so I think
Yeah.
people need to think about that too. There's endless careers in this sector.
Yeah.
If you're in to make money, stay in the private sector.
But it's also a very it's a profession itself. We have
It is.
association.
Yeah.
That's one thing that obviously we don't learn at school. What is a philanthropist?
Yeah.
Philanthropist, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, wow, thank goodness I actually went to that summer job.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's
The transferable skills I love, and I've been speaking to a lot of newcomers in different contexts, and they're like, I'm really interested in non-for-profit work, but do I fit there? I'm like, absolutely. Like, you were a teacher home, great, that's transferable. Education, program management, like,
Right.
because I have the vantage point to be able to see the path
Yeah.
for them. But really, there's a lot of people with great either backgrounds or education that absolutely are needed in our sector and would probably find a home there.
Amazing.
absolutely.
With that said, it's been a lot of great information. I'm happy we've also hopefully peeled off a few of the layers of how people look at fundraising, and sometimes that, like I said a couple times, the cold calling and just like, hey, give me your money. Like, it's beautiful to hear that what you're doing is impactful, but it's also about like trying to find meaning in every single action that you do, whether it's getting something that's going to be transferable to be put those funds into a program or whatnot. You're making sure that you know why you're doing it, and that's so beautiful to hear. So thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks for
Hope you
having
love the
us.
experience.
Thank
Absolutely.
Love. We're friends now?
Yeah.
Yay!
you. We're friends for life.
Okay.